Hello, my dear traveler. Tonight, we walk the twilight roads of Middle Earth, where the whisper of lost ages drift through the ancient trees, and the stars bear silent witness to tales long untold. This is a story shaped by the hands of time itself, one of quiet courage and undying fire, woven with the golden threads of longing and fate. If these journeys bring you comfort, like and subscribe to share this wonder with fellow seekers of stories. And now, let us journey beyond the edges of maps and memory, where a tale, hidden in the folds of history, awaits its telling. The road calls, let us follow. The fire in the hearth burned low, casting restless shadows across the carved wooden walls of the old mill. Outside, the wind swept through the golden fields of the Shire, carrying the crisp scent of autumn. The world was settling into quiet, into the steady rhythm of a life unchanged. But Hobart Took did not feel quiet. He sat hunched over an ancient parchment, the candlelight making the faded ink glow like embers. His fingers, smudged with ink and dust, traced the words again and again. The story on the page spoke of something impossible, a great fire that had never gone out, hidden in the ruins of a forgotten age. It was called the Ember of Rhinor, said to have been carried east when the old lands fell beneath the sea. It was a remnant of something greater, something ancient and powerful. Most would dismiss it as just another fireside tale. But Hobart could feel it. Something in the words sparked a longing he could not explain. It was not greed, nor even curiosity, but a pull, an unseen thread tugging at his heart, whispering that this was more than a legend. And so, before dawn broke over the green hills of the Shire, Hobart packed his satchel, slung it over his shoulder, and stepped into the road. The fire was waiting. The roads of the Shire were soft and familiar beneath his feet. But as the miles stretched on, the land began to change. The hedgerows grew wild, the trees taller and older, their roots twisting deep into the bones of the earth. Birds called from unseen branches, and the rustling grass whispered in a voice he could almost understand. For the first time in his life, Hobart was alone. He had left with no fanfare, no farewell, only a note tucked beneath the kitchen bread box. His parents would be scandalized. I took vanishing into the unknown. It was the sort of thing that had once led to Bilbo Baggins' infamous adventure. But Hobart was not Bilbo. Bilbo had been swept away by dwarves and dragons. Hobart had chosen this road himself. His map, pieced together from old books and half-heard stories, pointed him north toward Ostforod, an abandoned ruin where whispers of the Ember still lingered. It would be a long journey, and the further he walked, the more he felt the weight of the world pressing in. Then, on the fourth night, he found the footprints. Large, deep, not human, not hobbit. Something else was traveling the same road, and it was ahead of him. The night was silent, too silent. The usual chirping of crickets had faded. The rustling of the leaves stilled. A cold breath of wind stirred the branches, and somewhere in the darkness, something moved. Hobart crouched low behind the gnarled roots of an oak tree, his breath tight in his chest. He saw it then, a shadowed figure, standing at the edge of the firelight. It was tall, and wrapped in a cloak, the color of the deep woods, blending with the night itself. It did not move like a man. It did not breathe like one either. Hobart wanted to run, but his feet stayed rooted to the earth. Then, in a blur motion, the figure turned and melted into the trees. He waited for a long time before daring to move again. When he did, he saw something half buried in the dirt. A single blackened feather, too large for any bird he knew. The road was no longer safe. The northern lands grew wilder, the rolling fields giving way to deep, twisted forests. Hobart followed the remnants of an old road, one that had been swallowed by time and neglect. Then, one evening, as the sky burned gold with sunset, he found someone waiting for him. A tall figure leaned against an ancient stone marker, arms crossed, a hood drawn over keen eyes. An elf. Hobart had never met an elf before. He had heard stories, of course, tales of their beauty, their grace, their sorrow. But none of those stories captured the presence of one standing before him, wrapped in twilight and secrets. The elf was named Larion of Lindon, and he too sought the Ember. But Larion was not here for himself. He spoke of the black flame, a hidden power that had begun to stir again, drawn to the Ember's light. Something ancient and broken, long banished to the shadows, was rising. And if the Ember fell into the wrong hands, the fire would burn in darkness instead of light. Hobart did not fully understand, but he did not need to. The Ember had called to him for a reason, and he would not turn back now. The ruins of Ostforod loomed before them, bathed in the pale glow of a crescent moon. Crumbling towers, and half-sunken archways told the story of a forgotten time, when men had built their homes upon the bones of something older. Lirion led the way, his elven steps silent upon the broken stones. Hobart followed, heart pounding. Deep within the ruins, they found the chamber. Sealed behind an iron door, carved with runes of flame and ash, lay the last remnants of the Firekeeper's order. And at the center of the chamber, resting upon a pedestal of blackened stone, lay the ember of Rhinar. It pulsed softly, as if alive. But before Hobart could reach for it, the shadows moved. A figure stepped into the chamber, wrapped in a tattered cloak, its face hidden behind a mask of scorched metal. The Watcher. It had been following him since the wilds, and now it had come to claim the fire. The air grew thick with unseen power. The ember flared, sensing the presence of both light and darkness. The Watcher did not attack. It did not need to. Its voice was a whisper of dying embers, an echo of something lost. It had once been a guardian, long ago, before time had worn it down to shadow. Now it waited. Hobart understood then. The ember could not simply be taken. It had to be claimed. Lirion stood ready, blade in hand, but Hobart stepped forward. Not with a weapon, not with fear, but with a quiet, steady resolve. The fire had called him here, not the elf, not the Watcher, him. And so he reached out and took it. The ember burned, not with pain, but with warmth. A warmth that filled him, a light that did not scorch but strengthened. The chamber trembled. The Watcher took a step back, and then, as suddenly as it had come, it vanished into the dark. The test was over. Hobart was now the keeper of the lost ember. The journey back to the Shire was not as quiet as the journey out. Hobart felt it the moment he left the ruins of Ostforod. The presence, subtle yet persistent, trailing just beyond the reach of sight. He was no longer just a hobbit on an adventure. He was now a keeper of fire. Lirion walked beside him, though he did not speak of what had passed in the chamber. His keen eyes scanned the road ahead, ever watchful. There was no question now. Others had been searching for the ember, and they would not stop simply because Hobart had claimed it first. The first attack came on the third night. They had set camp beneath the shelter of an old stone outcropping, the fire burning low. The night had seemed quiet, save for the usual murmurs of the wind. But then, from the darkness beyond the trees, they came, figures wrapped in tattered cloaks, their shapes half hidden in shadow. Their presence felt wrong, not quite alive, not quite dead. Lirion moved first, his sword flashing silver in the dim firelight. Hobart barely had time to react before something cold and unseen wrapped around his chest, pulling him forward. The ember flared. A golden light burst from his satchel, cutting through the darkness like dawn breaking over a storm. The figures recoiled, their cloaks smoldering where the light touched them. Hobart gasped as the weight around him vanished, and he fell back onto the dirt. Then, just as suddenly as they had come, the figures disappeared into the night. Lirion sheathed his blade, breathing hard. "The shadows are moving," he murmured, "and they know who you are now." Hobart sat up, clutching the ember close. It had saved him, but at what cost? They did not speak much after that night. The road was no longer a place of idle talk. Every step carried the weight of unseen eyes. Every turn in the path a question of what lay ahead. Lirion guided them east, avoiding the main roads where travelers might speak of a hobbit and an elf moving together. But the enemy was already ahead of them. In Bree, whispers stirred in the prancing pony, of dark riders passing through in the night, of men who spoke in hushed tones of fire in the north. At the border of the Shire, a lone ranger stopped them, his face half hidden by a hood. His voice was grave when he spoke. "They are watching the roads," he warned. "The fires you seek are not the only ones burning. The enemy stirs again. The enemy." Hobart had never thought of himself as a part of something larger. He had only wanted to chase an old story, to follow a whisper of fire through the dark. But now he realized this was not just his tale. Something old and broken was waking, and it was looking for him. When at last the green hills of the Shire came into view, a deep sigh of relief filled Hobart's chest. It was the same land he had left behind, peaceful, unchanged. The fields still stretched golden beneath the autumn sky. The scent of fresh bread still drifted from chimneys. The soft murmur of hobbit voices rising from the lanes of Hobbiton. But he had changed. The ember, now hidden beneath his cloak, pulsed faintly. It had grown quieter since the ruins, but he could still feel it, like a gentle warmth resting against his heart. Lirion did not enter the Shire with him. He stopped at the border, standing beneath the shade of an old oak, his gaze distant. "You will not be safe here forever," the elf said, "but for now, the fire will rest." Then, with a nod, he turned and vanished into the wild. Hobart watched him go, then turned toward home. For a moment he hesitated. Did he still belong here? He was still a hobbit. He still longed for warm meals and stories by the fire. But now he carried something more, a secret that no one in the Shire would understand. Still, he walked forward, following the familiar path to a small mill beneath the hill. No one ever knew where Hobart Took had gone. When he returned, he gave no great tales, no wild stories of the road. To the other hobbits, he was simply Hobart, back from some foolish wandering. A bit quieter than before, but no worse for wear. The amber was hidden, tucked away where no one would find it. Some nights, when the wind howled through the hills, it pulsed faintly, a quiet glow in the dark. Years passed, seasons changed, but deep in the heart of Middle Earth, beneath the rolling green hills of the Shire, a small flame still burned, waiting, because one day, when the world needed it most, the fire would rise again. And so, dear traveler, our tale comes to its quiet end for now. But the road never truly ends, and the fire never truly dies. Sweet dreams. Good night.